To make first. Boo, sorry. Housekeeping. So first of all, for those...
This is what it looks like to be Dave Moore.
Don't violate the... You're off the panel. Jesus.
I totally had my money on me going first. This is some sort of elimination game?
Yeah. It doesn't. I didn't mean for it to be, but if that's what it ends up as, so be it. Announcements. For those participating in the puzzles in the program and elsewhere, puzzles 1 through 6 have been solved. Please stop spamming the address. If you solve other puzzles that aren't 1 through 6, continue. The address that you should send it to is info@shmoocon.org. And if you still are interested in playing the whole game, even if you haven't solved 1 through 6, you probably still need to solve them in order to solve the big puzzle. So, but if you've solved 2, don't get real excited because others have solved it before you. That will make sense to 10% of the people in the room. Also tomorrow, the information about where the party is, as well as the wristbands, will be distributed tomorrow. So we're printing out little things that have the name of it and everything, and some useful information on how to get there, as well as the DJs and that kind of stuff. And then the wristbands will be given out starting at 10 in theory, but we may do it early depending on how we have our clocks synced. So anyway, we're gonna kick off this panel. This panel is interesting because it seemed like it was imminent that we should have something like this. How do you want to be identified?
However you want to.
Okay, Mike the Prez. This is Mike the Prez. I mean, yay, Mike.
About the Prez.
It's all about the Prez.
All about the
So he proposed a talk that was talking about academia and hacker culture and how they conflict and work together and that kind of thing. And Heidi and I were involved in kind of maybe setting up an event around the same topic, and other people have talked about it over the years. And it seems like it was just kind of imminent, like, hey, we should get a panel together and talk about the union of academic InfoSec research and hacker InfoSec research, or the lack of union at times. Also, we were kind of, I don't know, we couldn't really come up with a keynote, and frankly, I think having an interactive discussion rather than a blast from a keynote is sometimes more productive. So this is our attempt to have a keynote panel, and we'll see how that works out. So for the panel today, when you're in school and you do well, what do you get? A gold star. I have gold stars. So today, I will be giving out gold stars. Some of them will be...
Not to anybody on this panel.
Pretend not to you. You've already... I'm going to remove your damn phone.
Are you going to write our name on the board and make checks too?
Yeah, well, I didn't make a dunce cap, but if someone wants to improvise one, we can make... Jeez, can't even get started. Can we turn his mic off? So here's the deal. We're going to go around and do intros. I'm going to ask a couple questions to get things started, and then we're just going to see where this thing goes. We have a panel that I'm frankly really humbled to be involved with the people on stage. I consider myself a hobbyist in this industry, and I think these folks are downright damn professionals. So I'm going to start.
God, I hope not.
What? Professionals, not mature. I don't know. There might be a balancing act. So. Want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Chris Eagle. I'm a senior lecturer at the Naval Postgraduate School out in Monterey, California.
Are the mics hot? Oh, Bob's working on it.
Chris Eagle, senior lecturer at the Naval Postgraduate School out in Monterey, California. Having just completed my ethics training yesterday, I'm obligated to say that everything I say today is my own opinion and not necessarily that of the lawyer. And what's that? Are you a hacker? Yes. More hacker than academic.
Woohoo!
Is that your opinion, or?
We could take a vote.
I'd probably fail at each. But...
My name's Michael Schearer, the Pres 98. Spent 9 years in the U.S. Navy doing electronic warfare. Thank you. Thank you.
Beat Navy.
Yeah, there you go. A lot of...
I also spent time in academia, and I'm currently a law student. And
Are you Jewish? You're not Jewish? No. How are you in law school if you're not Jewish?
Oh my dear God, are you serious? Get off the damn stage. Where did that start on the far end?
I'm an ethics first violation.
Yeah, you are.
I'm Dave Marcus. I used to be the director of security research at McAfee.
The Dave Marcus.
Yeah, I
Lost complete
did.
control.
Just finish.
I'm
The
Dave
Dave
Marcus,
Marcus.
and you all are not.
There you go.
That's a tough act to follow. I'm Invisigoth. Everybody calls me Visi for short. I do stuff for people. And basically, I try and help enable everybody else's research with a bunch of my tools and toys that I release. And I try and carry a bunch of stuff on my own that we don't really talk about so much. So that's about it.
Perfect.
And I'm Matt Blaze. Yeah, I win. So I'm a hacker, and I'm also a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and I think those are kind of both the same thing. And I have not taken the ethics training that Chris has taken, so I will say that I am speaking on behalf of the
So for the first question, our first gold star, and I'm going to handicap Matt and Chris on this. So the other three guys are going to get a chance to answer first. Name the top tier academic security conferences.
Academic security conferences. They have their own conferences?
Yeah, okay, so there's no beeper, so
IEEE.
yeah.
So
Here we go. Well, let's
that's
let.
kind of a big four, right?
Okay. Okay, you guys got a quarter. Okay.
Right? The IEEE Security and Privacy,
I said that
ACM
first.
CCS, and other.
I said
And we had Usenix
I
already.
presented it other.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the nickname for S&P, for IEEE S&P?
Oakland.
Oakland.
Even though it's not true.
Oh, so where was it held in 2012?
In Berkeley.
No. You're correct that pre-2012 it was held in Berkeley. Where's it held in 2012? I may take your star away.
Remember that far?
That was like this year, like just. Oh, it was San Francisco. But you get bonus points. Oakland, it was called Oakland, but it was never in Oakland. It was always in Berkeley. So.
First it was the hotel changed their mailing address by moving from
Yep.
one driveway to the other,
Yes.
thereby moving from Oakland to Berkeley.
Berkeley. Well, the purist would say Berkeley. So here, Matt gets a gold star.
I thought I knew trivial information.
It's not trivial anyway. So I guess we're going to start kind of with some open-ended questions, and I guess one of the kind of things that everyone wants to hear people's opinion, I think from the hacker side and the academic side, is what's your opinion of the state of academic InfoSec research? Dun, dun, dun.
is there-
You're speaking for yourself, by the way.
Is there a state of academic security research?
Do you use it? Do you use a research product from academia?
There's two different worlds. There's the hacker world of research, which is really not research, and then there's, it's not. It's really not. Here's the problem: is you have people who come up with a cool idea and say, "I've written this great script." We're going to start this again.
Yeah, we are.
Okay. I've written this great script, and I did no research to know that 12 other people wrote it 15 times before over the last 6 years. Nobody documents it, so therefore the research never actually progresses. And that's a real problem. So you have this hacker community which has great ideas, none of which are documented, none of which are annotated, and the same 12 scripts get written by the same community every single year because nobody documents, nobody actually does a quick Google search, nobody progresses research forward. So I don't think the hacker community does research.
I think
Okay,
that's
I would
kind
totally
of an
disagree with
Yeah,
you.
I 100% disagree. I mean,
You're wrong.
I mean, that's basically the kind of absolutism that basically shows that the two sides just aren't communicating correctly. I think more than anything. The gist of it is to say that it's only the same 12 scripts being written completely devalues 13. It is 13. To say that, I mean, completely devalues the actual cutting edge, truly information like idea changes that occur as a result of some of the hackers and
It's
applied
all the
research.
same thing every single con,
But it's
every single year.
I don't disagree with you about cons in a lot of instances, but not ShmooCon, of course. But
You're welcome to say it, man. It's fine.
but I do disagree with you about research not occurring. I mean, it doesn't always get published, and so people don't always know. But there are a lot of absolutely brand new approaches to absolutely open problems that get applied and actually go to field that you just never hear about because they don't get published in the IEEE.
But I think if nobody knows it, but I think if, oh, bless you, Heidi, thank you.
There's an excellent plan.
Jeffrey.
Oh, I get the closed one?
But I think, they're all closed. Here, stare at it real hard. But I think, you may be right, but as it's not documented, who fucking knows? Okay? That's my point, is as it's not documented, it's not annotated, it's not big.
Does anyone have a Leatherman tool or something?
Thank you.
And then the talk ground to a halt because we couldn't get drunk.
We couldn't get the beers open.
Vizzy was saying something really unique, but the beer. Like, thank you.
Present.
Is there audience interaction? There's always audience interaction.
Cool. Thanks, sir.
Hacker research is Mythbusters science. You're on Twitter an awful lot, aren't you, sir? You can fit
Mythbusters.
that into 140 characters. That was good.
Gentlemen, cheers.
Cheers, sir. I guess I'm the only one that doesn't have the flu. So you were gonna say?
Cheers. Alcohol kills germs. Jaeger kills everything else.
So I guess my question with respect to, so there's two sides of this coin, right? There's people don't look to see what was done, and therefore we reinvent the wheel, versus there's really no good way to archive the data, and we don't, as the hacker community, create publications and that kind of thing, so it makes it very difficult for people to even figure out what the hell's been done, because people go to little tiny regional cons and present really cool stuff, and the only artifact might be a YouTube video, which is not indexable and searchable.
So I think that's the only difference, right? I mean, look, there's a stereotype, right? And that's that hackers aren't serious and that academics aren't useful, right? And that, right? And,
He said it.
And that's and that's absolutely true of the worst of what goes on at a HackerCon and the worst of what goes on in an academic environment. And, and that's also true of the worst that goes on pretty much anywhere, right? So, there's non-serious and not useful, academic and non-academic work everywhere, but that's not how, we don't judge fields by just what they're caricatured of what the worst end of it is.
Yeah, but the cons don't require any academic
So
work
I think,
to do that.
but I think,
It's part
the
of
best
process, right?
stuff
They don't.
that you see at a place like DEF CON or here, or, any, CCC or any number of hacker venues is just as deep and just as hard and just as important as the best stuff that you see at, the best of the academic conferences. The difference is, academics are rewarded for producing artifacts. Oh my God, this is a terrible idea. Academics are rewarded for producing an artifact that, you're encouraged to read. But, if you want to play the academic game, but that's I think the essential difference. It's what we produce as what's left behind, not the work itself.
Yeah, that artifact is all too often not practically applied out of academia. Whereas from the
That's
hacker
actually
world,
one of the biggest problems with
the thing you get out of the
trying
hacker
to look
world
at
is
a paper.
I often get a tool. I read a paper and I get a lot of math and no tool.
Yep.
We did all this stuff. Clearly, they've got the tools to collect the data, and it never gets released. And
Or they have
that's
a
the
tool
beauty
that
of the
works.
hacker world is that stuff percolates out and it becomes useful.
Yeah, exactly.
But my point is if you apply the academic model to the hacker tool and the math, you get better hacker tools, and you get better documentation, and you get a better community, you get better cons, and, I'm sorry. What I said.
That's true.
What I just said. Did I spill the
A
Jaeger?
lot of what comes out of the hacker world comes out of teenage kids who aren't grounded in the theory yet.
Yeah.
And the hope is you got to foster the hacker mentality because you want them to grow up and then you want them to learn the theory.
The
Ultimately,
hacker
amount of-
mentality with rigor.
The amount of overhead that rigor requires oftentimes is such that it's a completely overbearing force to the research process. I mean, how many times have we seen papers come out that basically their only significance as a paper is that they managed to cite everything that they're talking about correctly. Good job. Your paper changed the world with your citation.
Yep.
So on the academic side, I think it's a bit of a big rock to push up a hill to change that process. But what about putting rigor? There's no gatekeeper, there's no advisor on the hack. I mean, at best, it's the program committee at a conference, but there are people who just, I did this thing and I tweeted it, and now people know about it.
Yep.
How do you institute that rigor without people saying, no, I'm not going to participate in your schmooballs.
Schmooballs.
I mean, maybe.
Twitter schmooball.
Virtual schmooballs in the form of the low orbit ion cannon? I disagree.
So I've reviewed for hacker conferences, and the reviewers are saying the same stuff. This has been done 100 times before. We're going to reject it.
Yeah.
So you get, for Black Hat, you get hundreds and hundreds of submissions, and you reject the vast majority of them for exactly the reason you're citing. So, yeah, it's happening over and over again, right? They're reinventing the wheel, but it's getting rejected by, at the conference level for the
Well,
most part.
At which
But-
conferences? At which
Depends on the
conferences?
Well,
At certain
Depends on the
conferences.
conference.
Hopefully this conference, hopefully, there are others that are weaker perhaps, but.
Well, so it's interesting, we talk
and,
about.
And the difference is, you take a different mentality though. Who makes up the review boards for the conferences, right?
Right,
If you got a bunch of hackers, you're gonna get a hacker-style review. But they know what's been done before.
Well, I expect-
But what they don't have is the rigor, right?
I
So-
expect a certain level or lack of level of professionalism in academia to B-sides, right? Because you expect it, that's what it's for. It's for new kid, great idea, never presented before, new idea.
You actually get a paper to review for the presentation committee.
Say that again,
You don't
Toby?
get a paper to review, you get an abstract.
Yes, that's right, you get an abstract, you don't get a paper to review, that's correct.
I would love to actually be able to say, yes, we require citations. You
Yep.
don't get in without it, but you don't get papers, you get an abstract, and if you're lucky, maybe you get a long rant that gives you some indication that somebody has an idea of what they're doing.
And that's kind of the nature of it, right? I mean, Toby, once again, has managed to accidentally say something useful, by the way. And it's this, you ever go to a virus bulletin or an ICAR? They're actually academic virus conferences. If you look at a submission for virus bulletin or ICAR, it's an academic conference. It's annotated, it's a paper that's actually presented. And that's what's expected there, and you're not going to be presenting there unless you present that. That's the level that's expected, and if you submit anything otherwise, you get a fail. And I think there's something to be said for that.
I definitely think there's something to be said for not reinventing the wheel when it's possible.
Thank you.
But it really does come down to the concept. I mean, at least in my background and what I've done, the bottom line is the shortest path to a new idea that changes the world.
Yep. I hear
And
you.
so if these processes are so heavy and these processes require so much foundation, you basically will squash all of the new good ideation that can occur.
I think
because
there's a balance.
you're requiring, no, and I totally agree, it's a balance. That's why I was saying, like, to the first comment, that it was too absolute. Because certainly the hacker community has something to learn from the idea of rigor. I reinvent the wheel all the time. I do it, like, constantly.
Sometimes the wheel's square.
And sometimes the wheel is square and it needs to be round.
And has doilies.
And has doilies, yes. Occasionally the wheel is made out of glass and we need it to be made out of something else.
Doilies.
But the gist of it is, I think that a hybrid approach between the two, where an academic environment could maybe understand the idea that taking these ideas through to applied implementations that people can actually carry the research forward and do something with. Because I mean, like, having the abstract of a paper is really great to be able to cite and see that someone has done that work before. But if you want to carry that work any further, a paper and their explanation of it without the actual algorithm or without a real implementation is very difficult. So
I agree.
Not to belabor this too much, I think focusing too much on, the academic conference community versus the hacker conference community is missing the point a little bit, right?
It's about the research.
Right,
It's about the research.
it's about the research.
Right, it's about what we're doing, right? And, one of the things that academics are, bend over backwards to do is be able to say, well, why is this important? And, that, is not something that the hacker community is as well practiced at being able to articulate for their work.
I think there's a rush to fame. I think there's a rush to fame and credit in the hacker community, and that's all good, right? You want to be the guy that gets credit for the O-Day. You want to be the guy that gets credit for the new slide, right? Things like that. Whereas in the academic community, it's about pushing the research forward. I have something interesting to say. Blah blah blah. I don't know.
No, I
All right.
think
Did I ask you? Did I fucking ask you?
Yes, you did.
Oh,
You're on stage.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize I asked you. Really? You can't hit me?
Mike's got a point he wants to make.
That part I have to disagree with. I think most people who are in the academic community, people who work in the academic community, if you haven't got tenure, there's incredible pressure to produce research,
Publish or perish.
to publish,
Publish or perish.
so that
But
you
you
can
note it's
get-
not publish good, like, revolutionary ideas or perish. It's just publish properly cited articles.
True, that's true, but they're putting something to their name, and they want it. They need it to be associated with their name, so they can,
There's trolls in every place. You know what I mean? I mean, but a documented troll, I guess, is better than an undocumented troll, I guess.
Like there are trolls on
So,
stage.
but I guess,
Am I right? Oddly enough.
Matt, to your point about, not focusing on the conferences, I think
Yep.
one reason why you may focus on it is because it is one of the few concrete things that you can cite is this person gave a talk at this conference, and finding this person posted this thing on this blog, or God help you, I've seen a lot of really interesting research where it was a tweet. Some guy's like, here's this thing that I did, and they drop it, and I'm like, there's not even like a freaking webpage to go with this thing really, and it's like a paste bin, and you're like, this is great
that
stuff,
research?
but it's
Is that research?
It could be foundationally, it could be very interesting stuff, but we don't capture it. I mean, that's, the hacker community and in a lot of ways society has kind of gone to this, a lot of ethereal, very rapid communication, which, the academic world clearly hasn't kept up with, but the advantage in the academic world that I see is that when you go to a conference and you publish and it's in the proceedings, like, now there's this document and you can cite it. It's hard to cite a tweet, first of all, if you can find it, but then, it's the finding it that's frickin' a bitch sometimes.
It's part of a body of knowledge, is what you're saying.
Right, well, the body of knowledge is very ethereal.
It's part of a canon or whatever.
Just vocabulary?
You've got the right version. I had to use Matt's paper on locks in a thing that I was writing for work, and even finding the last one, the most current one, it's a pain in the ass. Sorry.
No, thank bad copyright policies.
Blame the internet. Blame the internet.
Where it becomes difficult to even lay your hands on the information because it's ephemeral.
Right.
You're talking about tweets being ephemeral. Shit, how much stuff is on Blogspot and has disappeared?
Well, okay, so that, I know that's an idea that's near and dear. Okay, we'll go to that first.
Well, see, we're talking about these two sets, the academic set and the hacker set, but there's a third set, right, the intersection. There's stuff happening, that's a union of both sides, so how do we grow that intersection?
Well, I would submit that that's not so much an intersection, it's actually
So the comment is, how do you grow the intersection of the hacker and the academic community, recognizing that not all academics are ivory tower folks and not all hackers are sitting on Twitter eating Skittles all night long?
That's so true.
I don't even like Skittles.
We have Jaeger.
So, do we have a mic that we can run around with, or is that impossible? I didn't know that.
Come on, take it.
We could always do our own.
I'm going to disappear for a while.
So here's a question: is that okay? You've got a couple of things. You're talking about academia and the hacker world, but if this is kind of a triad, what about corporate research? Because that's focused toward producing a product as compared to producing a paper or producing some stuff. So what do you think about that, and how do you balance all three of those?
I mean, you could say that kind of applied results-oriented research is definitely my background. I haven't produced papers that require citations and things like that almost ever. I learned what Chicago style was the other day.
Somebody, yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Gangnam Style
So,
citing,
I
yeah.
mean, I think that a lot of that can spur the kind of philosophy that I'm talking about, where we end up in a shortest path to Ode, kind of like, if research is the art of failing until you don't, then fail faster. Do a better job of doing it more efficiently, even though you're failing at it. So that being the case, I think that's the kind of thing that will produce actual applicable results, and has by far been where I've been interested. And I think that the problem on the academic side is what they're incentivized by is different than that actually producing a thing that works in the field versus a paper that works in the field, which is properly cited and properly referenced.
So, it's time for another gold star, because I'm going to drive this conversation a little bit. Could someone summarize RF policy for me?
Summarize what?
RF policy. Rainforest puppies.
Rainforest policy?
Yeah. Wow.
Describes an interaction, but
If I was a responsible disclosure policy, you can still find it on wiretrip.net.
yeah, he said.
That was a good summary, or it was actually more of a pointer?
But he says
He actually
specific,
just
he
provided
says
you with a hyperlink.
specific timeline for disclosure to the vendor, an expected timeline for a vendor response to the discoverer, and back and forth, and to where you can punt and just release because you haven't heard from the vendor.
So,
Notice the academics
know
are
that.
getting the gold
so
star.
yeah, I was going to say, you guys are well versed. I'm impressed. So it's interesting. I mean, we deal with stuff that is valuable, and it only becomes valuable when it's invented or found or whatever, especially when it comes to Ode or something like that. So, as researchers, how do you disclose? How do you handle disclosure? Is it different in academia versus in the hacker?
Wow.
Mr. Security Vendor
Wow.
Representative?
Well, coming from a guy who works for a security vendor, ethical disclosure, right? You give us
Ethical? So I'm unethical if I don't follow your guidelines? Let's go here.
ethical disclosure. Give me a gold star.
Yeah, no.
And there's not a real good answer to that.
I may have been put on this panel in order to have this position and field this idea. I don't.
release them.
You don't what?
Don't disclose.
What's what I'm saying? Visi does not disclose. Why not? It's valuable information, right?
The information,
'Cause
in
there's
some
business
instances,
value to it,
there's
right? There's
business
business value
value
to it.
that is partially a function of being the only group to know it.
And considering who you work for, it's their asset, right? Right? It becomes their asset.
It can, certainly.
Is that a problem in academia where people have?
My job is to disclose, right? I mean, that's what I do for a living,
Yep.
right? As an academic, my job is to think of things and tell people,
Yep.
right? And, one of the problems I have with this concept of ethical disclosure is, well, ethical according to whom?
Right.
The problem is the people.
vendor.
Well, exactly. I don't work for the vendor, right? I work for to the extent I work for anybody, it's the public, right? And, so my ethical disclosure line does not include, whether I'm embarrassing somebody with a flawed product.
And actually, that's a good point, but that doesn't actually occur to us either.
Right.
The problem you run into, and don't forget who I work for McAfee. So at the end of the day, Visi finds 0-day X in Virus Scan Enterprise. That means there's 175 million people on planet Earth that are vulnerable to Visi's 0-day, okay? Before Visi releases, we need to have a fix in place that doesn't put that 175 million people in jeopardy. So Visi needs to get complete credit for the stuff that he's done and everything he's found, but we need to also be able to apply a fix
Right.
to those people so they don't assume risk and stuff like that. So it's just that's what I mean by ethical
But
disclosure.
I think here's the problem, is that's
And
too
I don't
narrow
think that's
a view.
I don't think that's in conflict
Right.
either, by the way. He gets credit, Mannion gets credit, people are protected.
But I think that takes too narrow a view.
Who cares about money? Missed! Dude, I'm not big enough, you can't hit me? Really?
I think there's a question. Hold on.
The next person that misses me needs to do a shot of Jaeger, okay? Come on.
Hold on. Try it again.
I mean, the model that I was talking about is not disclosing.
Question.
So is Visi the only person able to find bugs in McAfee? Yes.
No.
And there's only one of them, and only because
Yes, there's one.
nobody else can find it.
Right.
That's unlikely, specifically in McAfee products.
We have a question off to the stage left.
So in the
Go on the road.
in the case of academia, when academics disclose to a vendor, they can go ahead and write about it later, and they get their rewards of publication. In the case of the hacker community, what reward comes from disclosure? If it's fixed.
Microsoft will thank you.
You lost me on that.
Yeah, can you restate the question? We both got lost.
You lost me on that.
Well,
one.
I think the question is,
Can you ask
what's the in academia, the motivation to disclose is that's your job, you're an academic, that's what you do.
Right,
In the hacker community, your motivation to disclose may be different and potentially negative.
So
Well, that's a good
in
question.
academia,
What's the motivation to disclose a 0-day in my company's
Now-
product in the hacker community?
in the hacker community, in the case that there's an explicit bounty, then there's money. But in the case that there's not, in academia, you can disclose something, not get a bounty, but you still get your paper, you still get to publish about it. But in the hacker community without a bounty, there's not necessarily a motivator to disclose, document, and get it, somewhere visible.
I think that used to be partially like motivated and people were rewarded when it wasn't such a barrage.
It's less so now.
When basically somebody actually managing to own OpenSSH like Dowd did back in the day was so epic that the fame and fortune essentially that they received, they became a babe magnet for their O-Day, right? Because that's how that works. So, I mean, the gist of it is like, but really the reputation that they gained made it so that they were a sought after resource. Credibility, yeah. I think that was reason to disclose publicly. I guess there might be some kind of reason to disclose to the vendor that would be altruistic. I don't know.
Depends.
Academia credibility is the value. In the hacker community, it could be a double-edged sword.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard to say.
We got a question over here.
It's hard to
Actually,
say.
I kind of want to respond on that a little bit because
Okie dokie.
I'm in an interesting spot. I work for ICS CERT, so I've talked to both academic researchers and non-academic researchers, for lack of a better word. And there are some cases where people just want to get their names out there. I've seen that. It is what it is. I have no problem with Luigi. It is what it is. Some people just like that of getting their name out there.
And that used to be much more the case than it is now. Now
Right.
it's such a barrage that being the guy who found the bug
Right.
or whatever doesn't mean anything.
Finding
But-
another
but the
Ode,
interesting-
IE or Adobe is really not a big deal, right?
The
Finding
interest-
another one in Java, who fucking cares?
The interesting problem is when you get two researchers working independently, finding the same bug, and we've literally had this, where we've had two researchers giving us the same bug days apart.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Who gets the credit?
I guess my question is, who cares?
Well, if the only currency that you're trading in is the reputation and the credit, that's who cares. I mean, if that's the only reason to disclose publicly, if altruism isn't there and it's to build the reputation.
Again, with my vendor hat on, vendor doesn't care.
So is this leading to a path where hackers will disclose less and less?
So I think this might be something where us academics have an edge in understanding why we're doing it, right? Which is, I mean, one of the things,
Making things
I don't go and look for bugs in software, right? But occasionally I find bugs in systems, vulnerabilities in systems as a side effect for trying to understand something somehow larger that we can learn from, right? So. What I tell my students is that your job is to, your job is to be a public intellectual, right? You work for the public. And what? Do my students listen to me? I hope. I certainly hope they eventually learn not to. But that's the starting point that I give them, right? You're supposed to be a public intellectual. That's your job is to do things for the betterment of the community as a whole, and that's the metric you should use when you
Well done.
figure out what
Yeah,
to
exactly.
do.
Like I'm on the non-academic side, and while I believe in the academic rigor process and stuff like that, applying it all the time doesn't work. But for me, like I've been a hacker and on that side of things since like the beginning, and I've been listening to him for many years. So I hope that that's at least partially a measure. Right?
Not that Matt's old.
I know, right?
I'm just gotta watch what you're saying there, man.
I think the incentive to disclose is, I think it's driven by market mechanisms. So I think the bug bounty is the market responding to, hey, we want to get this stuff, and because that exists, if there's no bounty, and the reputation or the street cred doesn't come as much as it used to, then people are just not going to do it. They're just going to keep it to themselves.
Or it goes into the black hole toolkit, or it gets used in some other way, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
It gets put in a toolkit and people use their own
Question
machines,
for you.
right?
Question.
It's a lot of hands.
The
Lot of
title of
hands.
this panel is about what hackers can learn from academia.
talking?
And I'm going to ask if we're even accomplishing that. I'm not sure we are, but if we are, what was the idea that we were trying to learn? Because academics, they publish, it hits journals. If you don't have a subscription or you're not a part of an organization with that subscription, it's as good as me publishing to Twitter.
Or not publishing.
Or not at all.
Or not.
But frankly, I don't care that the wheel's reinvented by everybody, because usually that's a learning process, and they're developing, and they're sharing, and they're growing personally, which is a good thing as well.
Yeah.
So what was the point that we're trying to learn here?
The point for me was to be on a panel and get my ShmooCon ticket. Okay? Just saying. Just saying. That being said,
3 strikes, you're out. You're out of here!
I get a gold star.
Yours doesn't count.
But it's a good question. It's a good question. I think all that stuff is true. I think my argument is process, is applying a rigorous academic process. It's not what you learn as a hacker and how you hack, okay? To me, it's about how you hack and how you document and how you do bibliographies and things like that, and how you build a body of knowledge and move forward, rather than just saying, I did X, but I didn't check it against what other people have done, and I'm moving some things forward. That's, to me, what we're talking about here.
I think, personally, one of the problems, again, the reason why we have the con is because we don't want to see the wheel get reinvented. We don't want to see incomplete, incorrect research get propagated forward, but there's very few gatekeepers in the hacker community that we'll call bullshit, which is the opposite of what we see in the academic community, where there's potentially an excessive number of gatekeepers preventing research from, seeing the light of day. And I think there's something to be learned from both sides. And I think that's really the objective. And I think, we have some enlightened academic on stage who can help shed a lot of light into areas that might be uncomfortable for other people within the academic
I
community.
mean, these are fundamentally different processes, right? If you publish in academia, there's a very rigorous process to getting your product published. Okay, if you want to publish in hackerspace, you post it on a blog. Done. Boom. Right? Okay.
right.
In academia, when you
No
want
one
to do
checks
it.
your shit. No one calls you on your shit. That's right.
No, I don't think
or
that's
if
true.
they
I don't
do-
think
or
that's
if they do,
true. I
it's
think
lost in
plenty
the
of
noise.
stuff
Come on,
is
calling
like this is
someone out on
old.
Twitter is not the same thing as it's calling
But
someone
that's
out
the
on
way
Twitter
it
is not the
works in a
same fucking
hackerspace.
thing.
In academia, there's an entire infrastructure set up just for doing literature review, right? You've got all these archives of all these documents. It facilitates this type of thing. In the hacker world, what do you have? Google.
Right.
Right? How do you know that that
No,
script's been written
what you have
12
is
times? What's your
flaming.
search facility to get that
Flaming
up?
is
What's
not
your
the same thing
archival
as an
mechanism?
academic
So, in an attempt to drive this forward in a slightly meaningful way, how do you make a better citable body of knowledge outside of the Googles? Do you go back to demos and we have a curated directory of security research?
Bruce, if I might, yes, the voice.
Oh, he's down in front. All right, yes.
There was a different motivation a long time ago in the hacker community, in the advisory section, going all the way back to Core and Zardoz, and going back to ADLGM, and what we tried to do with the law, with a lot of those, which was you didn't know how it was done, and it's fine. I'll let the vendor know. You can fix it. You can do what you want. Credit's great, and that's one of the reward sections. But we want the other vendors to know when it's a novel, new sort of thing, so that they don't make the same fucking mistake.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's about moving things forward.
Yeah.
Moving things forward.
That's kind of what's still in the academic stuff. I don't see papers in IEEE or Unix security going, I found out how to do a buffer overflow also. Here's just a different ROP mechanism. It's the same sort of my memory was not executable. It's something new. It's a timing attack.
Yeah.
It's a side channel leak. It's something else. And you need to know the fundamentals and the basics and share it that way. But somehow with the bug bounties and everything else, it's rewarded people for engineering efforts. And we're talking about publishing engineering work rather than the research.
It's not about making the
So
industry
how do
better.
we get the fundamental hacker ethics back into sharing the research, which I think is on par with the academic community in many areas, but that we bring that motivation back in?
I think that's an extremely good point. There is a lot of, as much as I would really love to call any time anybody's trying to do something that they feel is new research, I will put some bounds on the definition of research. And there is a lot of crossover for what I would call engineering, where people are taking a really a well-known thing and applying it in a new way, but it's still fundamentally they are engineering something rather than researching something. And certainly it seems like in the information security community and in the hacker community in general, the incentive that used to be there for the research is now mostly there for the engineering.
We throw the word research around a lot in the hacking community, and it's not research. Sorry.
Some of
Sorry,
it-
guys. Not
some of it
research.
is, though.
Some. It's not the point.
Turning more into around the horn than anything else.
I'd be curious to see if.
I didn't say we did it.
I'd be
Did
curious to
I
see.
say we did it, though?
I'd be curious to see if a conference gave preference to, I don't want to say cited research, but someone who submits a white paper with their with their abstract citations to prior work, because honestly, if you give a presentation in a hacker, regardless, academic hacker community, if you're building on someone else's work and you're not citing them, I mean, it's plagiarism.
Flat out.
Whether or not it's intentional or not, it's plagiarism.
Flat out.
It's unethical.
Really? Am I the only one?
That's true.
Really?
You guilted them into applause. I'm taking this back.
No, and you're right. You're saying there's no consequences. You're right. There is no consequences now, but maybe there should be consequences.
Yes, sir. Drink your Yeti, you pussy.
I mean, I'm definitely not. I don't want to bring all the tools from academia into the hacker community because I think it would ruin a lot of work. Frankly, I believe it would.
Well, no one would pay attention.
And right.
Yep.
Then again, I talked to some other people, and I don't see him here, but he's taken a course in cybersecurity at UMUC, which is generally considered one of the better programs in the country for cybersecurity. Is he in here?
Who? Okay.
Anyway,
we're using pronouns.
But he said that his professors they're 2-3 years behind in the stuff that they're presenting, and and they're not willing to consider the bleeding edge because it's not academic.
Right.
The hacker community is tactical, the academic community is strategic.
That's not necessarily true.
True,
though.
I disagree.
There's
We have a
also-
question in the back.
You're wrong.
No, above you, I'm sorry, sir, the guy with the microphone.
You're not wrong.
So when we're talking about rehashing everything and going back and reinventing the wheel, what kind of feedback are we giving the people who are submitting the papers? You know, when you're submitting an academic paper, you're going through a review board, you're getting notes and comments back. You're saying, this has been done, this has already been, you know, a road already traveled, but you had an interesting idea here. You need to move here. You need to take the focus and move to something that's new and novel. And what's happening, you know, you're coming back and saying, all right, well, I submitted 10 papers, 9 of them were rejected, and I got a fire talk out of it. But of those other 9 papers that went forward, you know, where's the feedback saying, okay, it's already been done, you need to give up on this idea, you need to move on, you need to read this,
This
and
is
you
the
need to evolve.
This is the only
great point.
conference
What was the feedback you got?
I
Yep.
presented
That's
at
a great
a
point.
dozen different conferences. This is the only conference that I've ever gotten feedback.
Me too.
Both from the committee and also from people who attended the talk.
But, you know, in the academic community, I mean, the feedback you get is very mixed, too, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but you get feedback.
sometimes you get reviewers who do a really good job of explaining what's wrong. Others, you know, will give you a, you know, really bad
I can
or
tell you this.
incomprehensible review. I mean, that, you know, people do a good job and a bad job everywhere. Right?
I've submitted for VB, I've submitted for ICAR, and I've submitted for Intel, and I've submitted for McAfee, and I've submitted for hacker conferences. And I can tell you this, academic conferences, you get feedback, okay? You don't get, I'm sorry. But
do get feedback,
The people on the CFPs for
qualities.
Black Hat and DEF CON, with the exception of ShmooCon, in all honesty, not because I'm sitting up here, I've gotten feedback on why my talk was not accepted. That's one of the few. The others are just like a boilerplate response on, you suck, submit next year, here's your charity ticket. You know, but if you submit to VB or ICAR, they will tell you line by line why your shit stinks. And that's helpful.
So we keep
telling you why your shit stinks makes your shit stink less in the future.
No, it does not. No, the last time, that ended badly last time. We keep coming back to conferences, like kind of counter to Matt's kind of original guidance, which is why the hell we keep talking about conferences. It seems like in the hacker community, we're almost saying the only real attempt at having some sort of legitimate review is the conference program committee, because we're not talking about it. There's no other entity, no other body we've talked about. So, you know, we're saying, okay, I guess this is the best we got, so let's critique this. Is that kind of...
I mean, there's definitely a lack of any kind of like unified review board or formalized review structure. And so that being the case, the amount of feedback that anybody gets, they have to try and sift through the nonsense that they get back from people hating them on Twitter, et cetera, to try and find anything with which to better themselves, right? Or...
Let's say all the people
I should
who
write it
submit-
in Ruby.
Let's say all the people who submit for ShmooCon 2014 suck, okay? And they're
So you
terrible
submitted all the
submissions.
talks?
Of course, duh.
Okay.
They're all terrible. Well done. Let's say they all suck. Would you give them good feedback and have them resubmit, or would you cancel ShmooCon?
If every talk sucked, we would go source
Yeah.
good talks.
You would source
We
good
would go
talks.
find people we know that did good research and get them on stage.
How many do you think do that?
That's like all the molecules in the room suddenly migrating to that corner.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not...
It could happen. It won't.
It's highly unlikely. You have a question.
I'm
I hope it's a
Crispin.
question.
I've been a professor, I've been a startup founder, and now I'm at Microsoft. I've had papers at Usenix Security, IEEE Symposium, DEF CON, and ShmooCon. So I've got a bit of perspective on the difference. At an academic conference, most of the papers are crap. They're all true, but they're mostly irrelevant. And at a hacker conference, most of the talks are crap, because half of them are just wrong, and half of them don't know about prior art. So they're
all crap.
Did you want yin or yang? No, mostly crap. Sturgeon's law applies to both. 90% of everything is crap.
Do you have a paper that proves that 90% of this is crap,
Yes, we'd love to receive your references.
Prior art, Theodore Sturgeon.
sir? Give me a star.
You keep
Give me a star.
filching
I
the
get a star for
stars.
that.
You took 2. Give me 1 back. You
Oh, you
So
bastard.
do you have a question, Crispin, or you just... I'm hoping there's
If I have
questions
some feedback for the con, the big difference that gives academic cons leverage over hacker cons is academic cons make you submit the full paper. Hacker cons select talks based on a paragraph and the reputation of the speaker.
And you know,
true.
academic conferences
Oh, cool.
scare away a lot of really cool stuff because of that requirement.
So,
think there's
and
an-
in
and my point
between,
is
there
there's a
are,
middle
there
ground.
are
There's a middle ground.
there are academic conferences that take the middle ground and they ask
There's
for
a
a paper
middle ground.
proposal, and it's like 5 or 6 pages and so forth.
There's a middle
And
ground.
I think my 15 seconds is up.
Your submission which says, I has written scripts and am great hacker, not a real good submission.
Well, no, it's tough though, because sometimes we get submissions that are poorly written, but when you look at the work that's been done, you go, holy shit. You know, and I know that there have been talks that have ended up on this stage that through the attempts to, you know, convince us otherwise, it was great research, you know? It was poorly written, it was an incomplete submission. They are exceptions, but they do happen.
But that's the benefit of a rigorous CFP process. Yeah?
Well, that's fair,
Yeah?
but at that point, then we're saying, okay, so HackerCons are the gateway to, you know, publishing in the hacker community, and then it really just relies on how good's the program committee. And who's your program committee?
disagree. I
That kind of
disagree.
lightning strike, though, clearly happens at places like DEF CON and things like that as well.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
There are the
Yeah.
diamond in the rough talks where they are presenting something that is truly new.
Right.
That isn't the 12 scripts. Right?
That is true.
13, pardon me.
I give you that.
Would you put Gobble's talk from like DEF CON 10 in that category?
What was that?
Gobble's talk from like DEF CON 9 or 10 in that category where it was batshit crazy but really awesome?
Right? I don't know.
And you don't want to, you don't want to, forget it.
Good, excellent. Question?
So
Too much Jaeger.
we, you know,
Or not enough.
I've been on the program chair for ShmooCon for most of it, along with Ben and I leading it, and Crispin's done a lot of work. And we intentionally tried to find a middle path on here because we believe that both of these things suck. And if you look at what we do, we say in essentially plain English, we want something that approximates research. We say we give great preference to a new and original work.
Of course.
And,
Yep.
and the
is
PC
documented.
does things like downrate things that have been presented before and so on and so forth, because we don't want to make someone do all of the work and then have to go shop it to a conference, because I also have done academic papers and so on, and that sucks. And especially when you know you did something good and they just don't get it. And it's also yet another Me Too, oh, I found another buffer overflow in that. There are entirely too many many HackerCons where the talk is a well-worn path is finding something new. So how do you do a little bit more of both? I mean, we've been trying to do it here, and thank you very much for the words of encouragement, but how do you do something on the other end where it allows things that are more bleeding edge? Because it really is true that the academic stuff is several years behind what's going on in the real world.
Did they not get your CFP, or did you not write your CFP correctly? That they got it, that they didn't get it?
What?
He's the guy that's
My
selecting the
point,
papers.
my point is the person, well, my point, it's marketing, right?
No,
Dude,
no,
that's
not at all.
So weird.
I'm gonna borrow your mic.
A different way of saying that is Chris Eagles, Matt Blaze, you guys do novel applied research out of academia, which is different than a lot of the academia stuff. What are you doing that's different from the other academics?
That's a great question.
Well, I'm a
That's a really
hacker.
good
Not all
question.
academics are hackers, right? I mean, and they don't have to be, right?
So I try to build tools. I try to build tools that are useful, you know, across the board. I don't tend to spend my time trying to advance theory, right? So a lot of academic research is advancing theory. I try to apply it and build tools that are general purpose. When you start to migrate to hacker cons, you see a lot of one-offs, right? It's the same old buffer overflow. But what, you know, I sometimes wonder if we're worrying about, you know, the wrong stuff. Do these things need to be reconciled? What do hackers want to see at a HackerCon? Do I want to know how to own a Cisco router, or do I want to learn some theory that will let me own everything, right? So a lot of people want to know how to own a Cisco router. That's a one-off, right? And so you don't write an academic paper on how to own a Cisco router on a particular buffer overflow. It just doesn't fly.
There's just a lot less theory. I mean, new novel basic techniques come out once every 3, 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
And then you have to have something in the conference for the other 4.
Question. It's a question, right? Please,
Yes.
God. Okay.
Yes.
Because there's been a lot of ranting here.
I was wondering if a couple of you guys with differing opinions, preferably, would chime in on what you guys mean by research. Because when I think about research, I think about blue sky research. I think about things that got us transistors, other like
Absolutely.
inventions,
That's
which
a
are a
great
bit
question.
more novel than, say, like, wow, here's the latest way to use Google to profile something or another.
I think it boils down to new big ideas. I mean, sort of the short answer is if you're applying a well-known idea in a slightly novel way, I don't know if I'd call that research, but if you're formulating a new big idea and using it to solve somewhere that there's a gap, or using it to solve somewhere that there's coverage, but there's radical inefficiency and that kind of thing, I think really it boils down almost to how much it causes us to have to change the way we think about the problem. If it causes a big change to how we think about the problem, then I would call it research.
No.
Hang on, I have
Very
a conch.
few, actually.
I have the conch.
Very few talks on fuzzing.
So we don't have a hell of a lot of time here, and I do want to address one thing.
The question is, it's a disciplined process. That's the difference between.
So,
I'm so glad it's not me.
Somebody somewhere can certainly pull up the Webster definition of research, and it doesn't have the word academic in front of it. Okay, it's a. No, we have a security group at my school.
I think for me, when I see something anywhere, whether it's watching a con talk or TED or something like that, and I say, wow, I never thought of that, or wow, I never thought of doing that way, to me, that's research.
I agree.
I know that's sort of a backwards definition.
No, I agree.
That's engineering.
That's not so much the definition as the technique for identifying.
right.
I agree.
So one thing that has happened over and over in the last 45 minutes is we talked about O-Day, buffer overflows, pwning, things of that nature, and there's been very little discussion about defensive research, both from the academic side and from the hacker side. So, and I know this is a rock that's been pushed uphill to no progress whatsoever. Is there any way, I mean, the term has been thrown around to make defense sexy, I don't even want to go there. But the reward, if the reward on the hacker side is credibility or money, if you're hoarding it, I don't mean to call you a whore or a hoarder. For O-Day, is there any motivation left to build defensive technologies in at least the hacker community or even the academic community? The Blue Hat Prize. The Blue Hat Prize is the single motivator for defensive technologies in the entire industry.
No one is interested in defensive technologies.
$1 million worth of money
It's-
for the prize, and the academics ran it.
So look,
That's
the,
interesting.
the,
How can we create challenges that put hackers and academics on the same
look,
page?
That's interesting.
Well before anyone here was born, the first problem in computer science that anyone noticed is that we don't know how to write programs that work,
Von Neumann.
right? I mean, this has been
It's a von
around
Neumann issue.
for a while,
Yep.
right? What the best we have is we look at how things fail, and we learn how to avoid doing that occasionally.
No, we don't.
Right? Occasionally.
Occasionally.
Just
What we
occasionally,
do,
right?
what we do is
So,
continually show how things fail.
I don't
We
actually,
continually show how they fail.
I don't-
We
I don't-
create
I don't
new
see a-
technologies that don't fail.
I don't see a big distinction between offensive and defensive research. I think, in order to do one, you have to do the other.
Yeah, but here's the thing, is everybody wants, who in here has written something that gets past AV? Hands, hands, hands. Who in here has written something that makes AV better?
That doesn't work in an AV
Lot
company.
less hands. Lot less hands.
I think you have to look at it. I think you have to look at it from.
The talk that made the AV better got rejected.
Yep, that's right. It's not the point.
Oh, it's not the point?
Can we give him a gold star?
Yeah, it's.
Give him a gold star.
Sir,
Seriously, come up and get a gold star.
who's writing AV
Come
that
up
actually
and get
works?
your gold star, Cryptos.
Where'd it come from? Oh, you gave him yours?
I checked it out. I checked it out.
Oh,
Okay, I don't mind giving him my gold star.
look at Dave redeemed himself. It's like an after-school special.
Jaeger shot for you too, son. Come on now. You know you want some.
We have a
You know
question.
You want some.
Go, ask it.
So one of the elephants in the room.
Alrighty then.
One of the elephants in the room is popularity contests. So, not ShmooCon, but other conferences really focus on, how popular it is, and attack is one of those things. So that's why attacks are what things talked about, because it's sexy, right?
Yep.
So, yes, I did say sexy. So one of the things that like you want to do as an attacker or as someone submitting to a conference is do something that's sexy so it gets submitted and accepted. Of course.
Yep.
Let me give you an example of from a different field. So I was in the military. I was in naval aviation, and everyone who grew up in the '80s who saw Top Gun wanted to be a fighter pilot. No. Well,
I totally did.
I was a bombardier.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Many people who grew up in the '80s wanted to go into the Navy and be a fighter pilot. Well, not everybody can be the F-18 or the F-14 pilot, right? So I flew EA-6. I flew in EA-6B Prowlers, which are very ugly planes. Yes. But however, what we did was we supported the fighter pilots by shutting down the enemy radars so they could get in, right? So what we did was not sexy work. It was ugly work, but we took pride in what we did because we helped save lives of other people. Now, defense in this way, you may not be saving lives, but you're doing something for your company, you're doing something for your clients, you're saving them money, you're saving them a hassle, you're doing something that you should take pride in, regardless of whether or not the outside rewards are there or not.
I think, though, his comments may have been specifically to papers and talks. You know, you're not going to get the talk. You're not going to get the talk slot at a conference because your work was doing the right thing in the trenches.
That's right.
You're going to get the talk because your shit was sexy.
Yep.
Like, period. Right? Right, exactly.
Did you ever see the epic tanker refueler?
Dude, that was great.
8 hours of flying over the Atlantic. What'd you have for lunch?
That guy
So
that loaded
I have
the
a totally
missiles,
different
he was
question.
hot.
Right, yeah.
I have a totally different question.
Sure that's not
Excellent.
The number of talks that have been at extremely popular conferences like Black Hat, where the presenter has submitted an idea that they've done no actual work for, and then they talk about on Twitter 2 or 3 weeks before the con, hey, maybe the con's coming up, maybe I should actually do the thing that I said that I'm going to present about. How do we as a community stop that kind of bullshit research?
The con itself.
I have never done that.
I think, in all honesty, like that might be a function of like having it become a thing where a hacker conference can actually revoke someone's acceptance.
Well, okay, so
you should demand to see the product. When I review it for Black Hat, I say, I don't believe it, show it to me, and then I'll get back to you. But the general reviewer doesn't do that, right?
Well, so the counterpoint, though, and this is something that I know that we talked about kind of offline ahead of time when we were discussing, is the rate of research. And so when you say, hey, you need to, if the CFP for Black Hat's like what, in February or March or something, and then you have to have a fully baked product and then hold on to it for 6 months or whatever until Black Hat is, how many people are going to actually do that?
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
Well, that's how academic conferences work, but if the motivation here is fame and money versus, I'm an academic and I'm doing this for slightly different reasons, why would people actually finish the job 6 months earlier? No, I mean, I hear what you're saying because I've been that jackass. So.
Who hasn't done like all of them that way?
Yeah, right.
The day of.
Boom. 10 minutes before, motherfucker. Come on.
Atlas has got to.
First of all, how many cons are going to shut down that kind of press? Second of all, does the talk suck?
If the talk sucks, then.
Well, if the talk doesn't suck, it doesn't matter. I mean, that's the thing. If it gets the press and people are engaged, I mean, this is even, people get rewarded for presenting the same thing over and over at conferences, even if it's the same research, because it packs the room.
It's a tour.
Right?
It's not a con, it's not research, it's a tour.
Right, and that's something, and again, we're not trying to, I'm not here to try to toot ShmooCon's horn, but we push, as John pointed out, we push back hard against stuff that's been presented elsewhere. We'd rather have a half-empty room with someone presenting a new idea that gets out there, rather than have a packed room with someone who's presenting the same thing for the 20th time. And here's the deal then, I guess, if you like that model, and if the feeling from this panel seems to be conferences are the gatekeeper, ignoring some of the work that comes out that's just flat out awesome that comes out, Bluebird. If conferences are the gatekeeper, it's up to you to put pressure on the conferences to say, I've seen this before, I don't like it, this is bullshit, it hasn't advanced it, put together a better program committee. I mean, this is your responsibility to help fix. No, most program committees can look through and see better stuff.
Bruce?
Black
Bruce,
Ops of
Bruce,
TCP.
one-
Oh,
one
we got
more
one
here.
more.
Yeah.
Anyone?
Yeah. What I will say that we also have a fundamental responsibility, which is to put on a good con. And an awful lot of what goes on, particularly in a con like ShmooCon, is this going to be a good talk? Which is a different question from is it good research or is it anything else? And there are lots of things that we accept because they are a good talk. Now, having good research is a really good way to have a good talk, but
That's
we have
fair.
to put on a good con.
There
and that's
certainly
what
is an
we're here to do.
entertainment factor for conferences. Absolutely, no doubt.
That's right.
Well, that's something at HackerCons, and you don't have. There aren't many. I mean, you have invited tracks at academic cons, but like you don't have papers like this would be a really entertaining paper.
But the reason that I go to conferences is, I mean, the talks are going on, but I'm here for the hallway, right? In
At
almost
this,
every
versus
and
like
no,
usually.
everywhere.
Okay,
Everywhere.
okay.
I'm always there for the hallway, right? I mean, in particular at an academic conference, I can read the paper, right? But the single most important thing I get out of a conference is the community.
And you can read the paper later.
Yep.
Right. Okay. All right. So we're an hour into this thing, and people are getting hungry, and there's probably like diabetics going into shock.
We've got Jaeger for the diabetic.
We've got one. Everyone has a gold star. So I'm going to ask the panel their opinion of what they think the best research that they've seen in the last 10 years, wherever the hell it came from, and what you think the most important research is going to be done in the future is going to be. Not to put you on the spot, because it's kind of an open-ended question. So I'm going to put this guy, who I just gave the charity star to, on first. And you got like 30 seconds, man, to summarize it. What's the best thing you've seen in the last 10 years?
I see a lot of research.
AV. It's going to be big, like plastics.
Hold this. Come back to me.
Okay.
Seriously, come back to me.
This spur of the moment, man. I'm taking your star back.
I'll
You
go.
can't win. All right, you go.
I'll go.
Still have
And
my Jaeger.
this
Take
is
your fucking
this is more of a general trend, but honestly, in the last 10 years, I think defense has gotten a lot better. I think it really has. I think 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was a lot easier to own boxes than
It's his opinion.
It depends on the target, but I think there are some people now that are doing defense a lot better than they were even 5 years ago.
Completely.
Is it a lot harder now? Do you sweat more?
I get paid more. Does that count? I'll go out on a limb. I think one of the best things that I've seen in the last 10 years that's been the newest, coolest thing that I've seen published was the leap to the idea of purely hypervisor-driven implants, rootkits that could live entirely in virtualized spaces. I think that's actually really serious business. That took a very strong leap, and the implementation was initial but functional.
Right.
And as far as direction that I think things are going, if I had to again sort of go out on a limb, I think that some of the work that's literally just scratching the surface and in the very, very beginning stages in symbolic analysis and program analysis via symbolic reduction.
Oh, going back to the 50s.
Right.
Okay, cool.
But people are carrying that forward now in a way I think that's becoming applied.
Yeah.
And is becoming new again, I guess.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to give a negative one, right? It's
Okay.
the thing that the best thing that we've stopped doing in the last 10 years. I've noticed no paper written in the last few years, sometime in the last 10 years, makes the case that security is important. You don't have to bother doing that anymore. I think that is a huge accomplishment for the community.
Yeah, I agree.
It's true.
We're not there yet.
I have my gold star.
Well, we got to see who wins, because everyone's equal. We're like 5-year-old soccer right now. So. Yeah. Anything?
Oh, I'm going to cop out, and I'm going to pimp Ben's project Capsicum.
Yay!
Which is a capabilities product for FreeBSD. So take a look at it if you haven't looked at it.
Any final comments from the panel?
You rather than all the research.
It's possible.
All right, I'm going to declare the winner to the first annual, probably the only ShmooCon Academic Hacker Meetup, to be Matt Blaze. So let's get that in. All right, real quick announcement. The bar is going to close at 2 a.m. upstairs tonight. I know. It turns out it's the law. and then they have to come through and clean. So if you're still there at 2 a.m., you can go find a quiet space. Oh my God. The clock in the bar is NTP synced. No, do not hack the bar. Do not hack the bar! God. All right, have fun. See y'all tomorrow.
A pleasure.
Where's your here, Ted? Hey!
Matt, actually, all of this, I said yes to being on this panel because you were here.
I'm sorry, let me apologize.
No, absolutely. Good job.
By the way, you're really good at everything you're on.
I wish it was a little more structured. We could have gone somewhere.
So the problem is actually forming anything constructive on this matter is really hard.
It is hard.
It's like capital H hard.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's funny, we got super light academics here. There's a whole universe of academics.
Saw you over there.
Even close. I know.
Where's that? Is Esteban here or no?
Very tough.
He's going to be on the can set? I was going to go out, but I don't know. You going to be out there now? That might make me go out.
Yeah, it wasn't specifically determined to be a bad idea.
I'm so off I'm so off the circuit.
I think that, frankly, feeling that.
Fuck is that?
No, you don't want to do that.
Oh, shit.